So the NBA season is right around the corner. I have to make videos gearing up for it. In today's video, we're going to talk about my top 25 players in the NBA. Before we get into the video, please understand I'm talking about 25 players within a short amount of time, so please forgive me if I don't give you a long essay on why number 17 is ranked over number 19. And finally, this list is a bit of a projection on what I believe these players are going to do in this upcoming season, putting into context what they've done in previous years, as well as what their team looks like in this upcoming year and how well I think they're going to perform with the players that are going to be surrounding them. Now, that being said, honorable mentions, because who number 25 is going to be definitely controversial. Paul George, Lauri Markkanen, and Zion Williamson. Not putting Zion on this list is going to be certainly controversial, so I'll tackle that a little bit later on. However, just quickly, both PG and Lauri Markkanen, really great players, hyper-efficient scorers. However, their game is much more complimentary than I think a lot of people are willing to admit, especially Lauri Markkanen. A lot of catch and shoot when it comes to his shot selection. Because of the lack of shot creation, at least at elite level, his passing and playmaking certainly falls short in contrast to a lot of other players on this list, which is why I left him off of the top 25. And similar things can be said about Paul George. Even though last year was one of his most efficient scoring seasons throughout his entire career, again, very complimentary catch and shoot player alongside James Harden, a role that I do believe will carry over into this next season, playing alongside Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. And also the regression of who he is willing to be defensively is also very, very concerning. And on top of that, he's just getting older. Then you have Zion, who I'm not as high in Zion as a lot of people are, and I know for a fact a lot of people are going to be upset at me who I have at 25, but just quickly, I don't think that New Orleans is necessarily putting Zion in a situation this upcoming season to truly maximize who he is as a player. DeJounte Murray is going to take the ball out of his hands, which is going to reduce the type of passer and playmaker that Zion is going to be in this upcoming season. And even though, yes, Zion is a historically great finisher at the rim, offensively, it's not really much else that's there. Obviously, he doesn't have an outside shot, doesn't have a mid-range jumper. The post game is there, but it's not happening actively enough for me to really put that over the top for him. And then defensively, he just isn't the player that he should be, or a lot of people rejecting him to be at this stage of his career, which I think is going to be really damaging this upcoming season when the only player on the Pelicans that has any experience at the 5 is Daniel Theis. But with that being said, if you want to put him over who I have at 25, I have no problem with it at all. And speaking of which, at number 25, we have Zach LaVine, 24, Jimmy Butler, 23, Paolo Banchero, and 22, Tyrese Maxey. Zach LaVine is where a lot of people are going to be upset at me. Personally, I'm pretty high on who Zach LaVine is going to be in this upcoming season. No more DeMar DeRozan, which means an increase in scoring production and responsibility, which I think he should be able to excel in. Before last season, when he got hurt, 70% at the rim in the 2 years prior, consistently above 40% on the mid-range jump shot, good volume three-point shooter as well, hitting him at a more than respectable clip. His passing and playmaking obviously isn't nowhere near close to a lot of players above him, which kind of keeps him in this tier and potentially off of the top 25. And defensively, of course, you can see a little bit more effort out of him as well. But I think even in those aspects, we could see a little bit more improvement in this upcoming season. And athletically, if he is still there, Zach LaVine, I believe, kind of leaps over a lot of players that I have below him, obviously outside of Zion. But for me, the biggest difference maker for Zion and Zach LaVine was simply put that I just don't see the motor that you would expect out of Zion. Last year, Zion was basically a historically great rim runner who didn't have the defensive motor to really cover ground like he's supposed to with athleticism, nor had the motor to be a really good rebounder. He averaged like 5 rebounds, and I don't necessarily know if any of that is going to change. The other players, Jimmy Butler, I think is pretty self-explanatory, regressing star out in Miami, has picked up a lot more passing responsibilities over the past couple of years, and I think that's the best thing he's added to his game as he's gotten older, but the volume three-point shooting isn't there, even though the accuracy was there last season. Finishing has also regressed overall. True, this could be a bounce back season for Jimmy, and with a really high defensive motor kind of puts him over a lot of people that have below him, but more or less Jimmy tends to coast in the regular season, and his true value doesn't get seen into the postseason, and we're all crossing our fingers hoping that he'll still be available to get to that deep into the season. Then Paolo Banchero, I believe Paolo's going to have a leap this year. Last season I saw a lot of really good moments from him. Of course, who he is as a player is going to be very, very reliant on his jump shot throughout the year. Of course, adding KCP should help him in those regards, and hopefully, and I'm definitely a huge believer in Franz Wagner, but an improved season from Franz Wagner will also aid him in that capacity as well, because I do believe better floor spacing will really help Paolo. But the biggest thing that I saw from him in the second half of the year, his ability to leverage his height and size as a passer and playmaker, which really separated him from a lot of other people, and I believe he should carry that over into this upcoming year. And then we have Tyrese Maxey. Huge shout out to Maxey. Great season last year. Even even without Joel Embiid, held his own. I do believe with other players surrounding him, not only with Embiid, but now Paul George, his shooting splits should go back up to where they once were. And on top of that, he has an improved passer and playmaker, should also aid him in his value offensively. Moving on to the next section, we have Bam Adebayo, Tyrese Haliburton, Trae Young, and Ja Morant. I may be on a very small island with a bunch of other Miami Heat fans who genuinely believe that Bam is better than Jimmy. And maybe that's just me, and maybe that's just a couple of us, but I thoroughly believe that Bam is indeed better than Jimmy Butler. I don't really think there's any argument on the defensive side of the floor, and that's where a lot of his value relies on. I personally believe that by the end of this season, Bam will be at worst the 4th or 5th best defender in the NBA, but you could very well argue he might be the 2nd best defender behind Wemby by the end of the season. Offensively is where I do believe a lot more of his value will be seen, and I do believe Miami will continue to lean a little bit more into him on that side of the floor as the year continues to progress, especially if Jimmy continues to just coast throughout the regular season. Do I believe he's all of a sudden a great three-point shooter? No, I'm not buying that at all. But what I do believe is that he is an improved jump shot shooter, which is something that we saw towards the tail end of the regular season last year. Very small sample size, about like 20, 25 games. But that is something that Miami has made a point of emphasis when it comes to Bam over the past couple of years, in particular during his offseason through several reports. And I do believe that will translate along with the fact that really great passer and again, just a phenomenal defender. I think he probably will finish the season 2nd or 3rd best defensive player in the NBA. Trae Young and Haliburton, I talked about this in my point guard video, so I'll just be brief with it. Two players who last year pieced together a 30-game sample size that was really, really impressive. When it comes to Hallie, he's never played anywhere near close to those heights throughout his entire career, so until he can piece that together for an entire season, this is where he's going to be found. And similar things can be said about Trae Young as well, who he's supposed to be over the past 2 to 3 years, in particular with his jump shot. It's been up and down with the 3-ball. Until he can get to that point in his career where that's a bit more consistent, he will continue to find himself in this subsection of stardom in the NBA. But I favor Trae Young a little bit more than Tyrese, just simply because he's a bit more of an aggressive scorer than Haliburton. Then we have Ja Morant, where I do believe he's getting a little bit lost in the sauce. Too many people have decided to just leapfrog both Trae Young and in particular Haliburton over Ja Morant, but please let me remind you who Ja Morant was before we got to this season. Ja was giving you 23, 25 points on a night-to-night basis. Mid-range jump shot the year before last looked really, really good. That in-between game was there. The floater was there as well. Of course, historically great finisher, but his passing, his playmaking, probably the more underrated aspect to his game. Of course, nowhere near as great as a passer as Hallie and Trae, nowhere near. But the playmaking is still there, especially on a roster that didn't really have that many offensive weapons around him. For him to still generate quality looks for that team, really, really impressive. Next section, Damian Lillard, Kawhi Leonard, Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, and Jalen Brunson. When it comes to Dame, admittedly, I am really holding on to last year just being an off year for him, making the transition from Portland to Milwaukee. He didn't look great practically all season long. The jump shot wasn't there, which isn't who Dame is as a player, so I'm assuming that's an off year. It is a bit more concerning he's not getting to the basket as often as he once did. Some of that can just come down to him not feeling too good in a new offense, with him and Giannis not being on the same page. Also, this could come to the fact that he's just getting older as a player, but the jump shot was certainly more concerning, and I just think that was a bit of a fluky year more so than anything else. But if he has another bad season, I just can't see myself putting him in the same conversation with some of these other players that I have him with in this category. Kawhi Leonard, I'm sorry. I'm off the train, dog. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell y'all, bro. A player who has only played 2 games since April 1st was not able to play the Olympics, still is not ready to play in the beginning of the regular season. I have no idea who Kawhi is going to be. Out of respect, I'm still going to put him in near All-NBA status, top 15 conversations, but I don't know what you want me to do with that. I mean, he's still not ready to play in the opening night in this upcoming year. I don't know what y'all want me to do with that. Then after that, Devin Booker, I think pretty self-explanatory. Donovan Mitchell, I think, goes under the radar way too often. He's had really, really good seasons over the past 2 years out in Cleveland. He's put up great numbers. He's put up around 25 to 28 points per game. Shooting splits across the board have looked great, finishing at the basket around 70%. Mid-range jump shot in between game there as well in the mid to high 40s. And even his 3-ball, great volume, great accuracy. The passing and playmaking should continue to take the next step, especially if they decide to put him more on ball. But a lot of that still is contingent on how many reps Darius Garland gets alongside him. But at the top of this section is Jalen Brunson. Brunson, who in all honesty, even though I don't have him in a higher section, could easily have an MVP caliber season just because of the level of usage that he's going to have heading into this next year. Last year, post Julius Randle going down, Brunson went up to a 30-point score. The shooting splits across the board was great. Finishing at his size was more than respectable. In between game was there as well. But the passing and playmaking to me is what really separated him from a lot of other players. Being able to match that 30 point per game at more than respectable efficiency with 8 to 9 assists on a night-to-night basis. Again, the usage rate is going to be really high, so the numbers are going to be very inflated. So he's probably going to post numbers that are better than some of the players I have ahead of him. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's better than said players. It just means that he's going to be utilized a little bit more often. But I do believe that because of that usage rate, because of what I saw from him last season, post Julius Randle, and because this is now a Knicks team that has really formulated their entire identity around the idea of Jalen Brunson being a ball handler, distributor, being a hub of sorts, I do believe that it's going to correlate to him being into near top 10 status. And now, this is where things get good, because I'm gonna be honest with you all, and I'm pretty sure many of you all feel this way as well. There's like 12 top 10 players in the NBA. It's kind of crazy how deep and talented the league is. But before we get into it, here's a quick word from our sponsors, Factor 75. Factor makes meeting your nutritious goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietary approved meals straight to your doorstep. And that is only the beginning when it comes to the conveniency of Factor 75. Thanks to the customization with their meal plans, you can decide what type of meals you want all throughout a week, depending on your dietary restrictions, if you're counting calories, or you just want the best meal that they had to offer thanks to their chef choice. Also, Factor isn't just limited to lunch and dinner. They have you covered for everything that you're trying to consume. Breakfast, snacks, protein shakes, smoothies, you name it, they got it. And even though, yes, this is an ad, I have been a customer of Factor 75 for months before they presented this opportunity to me. And there's two big reasons why I keep my subscription. The first one being counting calories throughout my weight loss journey has easily been the most difficult thing for me, but Factor makes it extremely simple. Thanks to the customization, I can just pick a calorie smart meal plan, and they also provide all of the information very easy on the back of every packaging. And secondly, as someone who is juggling multiple channels and streaming, it is extremely convenient for me to just go downstairs, throw my meal in the microwave for like 2 to 3 minutes, and bada boom, bada bang. I have a fresh meal that tastes good and is fulfilling. So if you are interested, make sure you head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code LOW50 to get 50% off on your first box and 20% off on your next month of orders. That's code LOW50 at factor75.com to get 50% off on your first box plus 20% off on your next month of orders. Coming in at number 12, we have Kevin Durant, 11, Anthony Edwards, 10, Stephen Curry, 9, LeBron James, and 8, Victor Wembanyama. I'm gonna be honest with you all, this section was not only the hardest to arrange, but also the hardest to separate from the section that I have ahead of them. The biggest reason why is because the older players, LeBron, KD, Curry, it's really hard to project what they're going to look like in this upcoming season. I get it. They all have established careers. They've been great for an extended period of time. But I'm going to be honest with you all, I don't think any of those players are in optimal situations for who they are as individuals, especially at this stage of their career. Tyus Jones is a great addition for the Phoenix Suns. Not the point guard that I think that Kevin Durant needs at this point in his career, and the Suns are still going to rely heavily on who KD is as a defender. Underrated defender. He has been that way basically since like 2015, 2016. He's been that way for a very long time, but I don't think that really changes who the other defenders are in this list. And also, I don't think his value offensively matches a lot of the players above him as well. The ability to get to the basket, share the defense isn't there as much as it once was before, but KD is KD, 25 points, very efficient, one of the greatest shooters of all time. I don't really think I need to go into details. When it comes to Curry, on a team that has a lot of big question marks, I actually do believe his passing and playmaking does separate him from a couple of players on this list outside of like really LeBron. That's the reason why I still have him in my top 10. Curry is still going to be asked to do a lot of things on a roster that, A, I don't even know if Steve Kerr is going to put the ball in his hands as often as he should, but B, I saw him towards the tail end of the year kind of flame out a little bit, and I think a lot of it just has to do with age, and similar things has to do with LeBron. Towards the tail end of the year, the effort defensively just wasn't as consistent. Again, he's 40 years old, so it makes sense, but moreover, when it comes to LeBron, it seems as if like JJ Redick is really taking a stance on the idea of Anthony Davis being a hub of what that team is going to look like in this upcoming season, which is why there is a separator for me when it comes to AD and LeBron, but I'll talk about that later on. The two young players though, Anthony Edwards and Victor Wembanyama. I am so torn on who Ant is going to be this upcoming season because I've seen some preseason games and it's looked kind of up and down with me, but I just got done watching the Knicks game and it all looked great. The three-point shot was there, the passing was there, the probing was there, the patience was there because Mike Conley wasn't playing and he picked up a lot more ball handling responsibility. It all looked there. The defense was still there too. The aggressiveness, everything. Like everything you want from Anthony Edwards was there to the point where he should actually be in the next section, right? But I have to see that for a whole season. I think there's going to be some growing pains. A lot more teams going to be adjusting to him picking on more on-ball responsibilities. But his defense really separates him from a lot of players below him, who I believe he's going to be as a scorer. He talked about how he improved with his shot selection, in particular his three-point shooting. I think that will also separate him from a lot of players below him, athleticism and just getting after it. And moreover, I really hope the ill-advised mid-range jump shots that does remind me of Kobe from time to time, I do believe that a lot of those are going to be removed out of the shot selection as well. But even with all that being said, I am still very concerned on what this team is going to look like when Julius Randle is inserted into the starting five. Because so far, we haven't seen Randle. It's a lot more Naz Reid in the preseason, but we'll see when that comes around. I do believe that's going to be a concern. And then we have Victor Wembanyama. It is basically pointless for me to even discuss Victor's season stats last year in his rookie season because who he was in the first 20 games is a completely different player who was in the last 20 games. In the first 20 games, it was this rim-protecting juggernaut that was a bit too overzealous on the perimeter at times and offensively still kind of piecing it together, trying to figure it out, not trying to step on too many toes. Second 20 games, really starting to figure out who he was offensively. And then towards the second half of the season, last 20, 30 games, he not only found out who he was as a scorer, made it much easier for him when he got to the basket, but also found out ways how to leverage himself as a scorer to record 4 or 5 assists on a night-to-night basis, while also being a more refined and more impactful defender. He did that all within a 60 to 70 game sample size. And be very mindful, not only was he trying to figure it out on the fly, but so was Popovich. Popovich was just bullshitting on the sideline for the first 20, 30 games, putting out everyone out there except for the best starting 5, and Victor still figured it out. Now with Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, who I think Barnes is going to be the biggest addition. I think that's the addition that a lot of people aren't talking about as much because he's going to get way more PT than CP3 is. But adding those two veterans on the team, a little bit of more consistency, continuity, and making it easier for him should really insert him into top 10 conversations. But I do believe Victor being not just the best defender in the NBA, being in conversations of being one of the greatest defenders we've seen in the last 20 to 30 years. I do believe that's going to put him in different conversations while also providing a level of offense that could rival many of the players I have below him, is why I think that he is going to further separate himself from a lot of other players and could pretty quickly find himself in the next section. The thing that really separates him and Anthony Edwards is just how consistent is that offense going to be? Because if it is a bit more consistent than I'm giving it credit, they could both easily be in the next section of players that I have. And that actually goes for everyone. Speaking of which, next section, number 7, Jason Tatum. Number 6, Anthony Davis. I think that both of these players are going to have really great years. Tatum is going to have a bounce back season. Really bad playoffs, really bad finals, still won a championship. Congratulations to him. But who he was as a performer, shooter, just wasn't there. Defender was there. Passing and playmaking has really improved. Finisher has also dropped off a little bit. I do believe giving him some time off, as well as a whole season with the new pieces surrounding him, he will look even better than he normally does. And I'm really banking on him just having a bounce back year in a general sense. And then Anthony Davis, like I alluded to earlier, JJ Redick has been very, very open and honest about the idea of making Anthony Davis the hub of what the Lakers offense is going to look like in this upcoming season. In theory, this should take a lot of pressure off of LeBron, which should lower his value, which is why I have him in the section below, but increase the value of Anthony Davis. This is something I've been asking for as a Laker fan for years now. This is something that I saw a little bit of last season towards the tail end. AD was a bit more on ball, improved passer, making better reads, something I think will continue as time progresses. And of course, who he is as a scorer, been very consistent. The jump shot was falling a little bit more frequently towards the tail end. Great finisher, lob threat at the basket. That's not going to change. And then who he is defensively after Wemby, I think, is a very legitimate conversation to be the second best defender in the NBA. I believe that wholeheartedly. I don't care what the GM say, and I don't care what the awards say. I genuinely believe that Anthony Davis is the second best defender in the NBA. And finally, top 5, Shai, Embiid, Luka, Giannis, and Jokic. I'm going to be honest with you all. Even though I said those names in order, I honestly don't think there is an order. Shai this year is going to take that leap and put his name in the conversation with these players. Last year, he looked amazing. He was way better than I anticipated. Went into the postseason. A lot of that value carried over there, and I think he's going to continue it in this upcoming season. Preseason games, he is walking into transition threes. It's looking spooky out here. Joel Embiid, injuries, of course, will always make it look a little shaky. Why I don't have him as a clear number 1 on this list. But of course, Embiid, when he is out there, when he is playing, it's pretty undeniable that he is on par with everyone else that I have left on this list. Undeniable. Then Luka, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Giannis goes under the radar a little bit too much for my liking, but I understand that he has been injured in the last 2 postseason runs, but definitely goes underneath the radar a little bit too much for my liking. I would have loved to see Giannis and Dame practice in the offseason a little bit more, but hey, yeah, it is what it is, right? And then Jokic is Jokic. I don't think I have to go into too much explanation for my top 5. I think they speak for themselves. The player that I do want to reiterate, though, because Shai, last year, he was in that section with AD and Tatum. I had to put him up from what I saw from him last year, carry over that production in the postseason. And I think if this jump shot shooting from deep is consistent, hey, man, we talking about something completely different. We talking about something completely different now. But all in all, that's my top 25 list. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And until next time, I'll see you all later. Peace.